If you're new here, my name is Jamie and I'm going to be running through the pros and cons of living in Perth. To give you some background, I grew up in Perth and I moved over east to Melbourne in 2015 for my postgrad, and I ended up living there until the start of 2023. So it's been about a year of living back in Perth as like a full-grown adult. So I've been really reflecting on the pros and cons. Let's just get started with the cons, shall we? And end on a positive note. So con number one, I feel like a lot has changed in the city, but the public transport feels like it has not improved at all since I lived here in 2014. I know that might sound really harsh, but the public transport is still very limited. Some areas are so difficult to get to, and when you like compare on Google Maps the car route to public transport route, it is not uncommon to see the public transport route taking like 3 times the duration. So that is definitely something to keep in mind if 1, you don't own a car, 2, you don't drive, other accessibility needs, etc. It can be a very big consideration if you're thinking about moving to Perth. Look, we do have a ferry. We have a ferry that crosses the Swan River. It can be a really beautiful ride to some people. Okay, moving on to con number 2. Like many other cities in Australia, there is a rental and housing crisis going on in Perth. So the prices continue to increase and the supply is dwindling. So it can be very challenging to find nice accommodation that is reasonably priced, that is not too far away. That's definitely a con, but is also not a unique experience to Perth, unfortunately. Con number 3, if you're not a fan of hot and dry weather, it can be a real struggle. I remember growing up, I used to hate the summers. I hated it so much, and I was not a beach person as well. I am definitely enjoying hotter weather now as an adult, and I feel like I'm so weak now with the cold. It's like 18 degrees sometimes in the winter, and I'm like, ooh, a little bit chilly out there. And then I'm like, oh my God, who am I? Who am I? If you're not a fan of the summer and the heat, it can be confronting because it's harsh. It's harsh out here. Moving on to con 4. A lot of people who live in Perth grew up here. They have very close and tight-knit friendship circles, and a lot of people, are still very close and spend a lot of time with their high school circles. And as a newcomer with no connections, it can be difficult to meet new people and expand your circle. I feel like it's very different from cities like Melbourne, because I think in Melbourne you do find it's a lot more of a transient city. A lot of people might live there temporarily from all around the world. It's just not as common in Perth. I've heard it time and time again of people who move to Perth and find it very difficult to make friends and make connections. Here, people are just so settled that I also understand the perspective of having a tight circle, and if you already have like really good people around you, honestly, some people just don't have the energy or time to invest in new relationships and friendships, which can be sad from one perspective, but also completely understandable from another point of view. Con number 5, I'm sure you've heard of this before, but a lot of people find Perth to be very boring. And it definitely has less of a nightlife compared to bigger cities, especially during the week. I find that a lot of people don't go out much during the week. Maybe it's also because, I'm nearly 30, so the people I'm talking to, they're not, like freshly turned 18. It's a different vibe. But from my experience, like if I say I'm going out on a Tuesday, people are like, oh, where are you going? Like, what are you up to? It is very common when I, chat to my colleagues, they'll, go to the gym and just have dinner at home, etc. It's just a slower pace. There are definitely less activities and there are less things to do. Places are open less. But personally, I wouldn't say that Perth is boring. There is so much to see and do in WA, like so many amazing road trip destinations. But I would say that like metropolitan Perth is a great place to live, but not a great place to visit. Con number 6, opening hours can be a real struggle. It was a struggle for me and my husband when we first moved back, because we'd rock up at the grocery store on Sunday at 9 a.m. and it's not open. And we're like, cool! Groceries, amenities, they're just open less. You actually have to check the opening hours and be more organized. It's not a big deal, but I would say it is an adjustment. I feel like I have to be way more organized here to get things done during the time slots of when everything is open. So those were all of the cons. Let's move on to the positives. So pro number one, it's the warmer weather. I think if you're a fan of the warmer weather, Perth weather is crazy good, and honestly, if I were to move back to Melbourne, I don't know how I would be able to go with the weather, because I didn't realize like how good we have it over here. It's just so much more sunny. Even in the winter time, it's very sunny, and it does make a huge difference to your lifestyle, your mood, and just the activities that you can actually do. For example, I find that you can do a lot more budget-friendly activities in warmer weather because it's so easy not to spend money. So for example, you can go on hikes, you can go on picnics, you can go on walks, etc. And I find that I am just living a healthier lifestyle here because I am just more motivated to go out and exercise and do things, but that's quite personal to me because I am someone who's really affected by the weather. Pro number two, if you have a car, Perth is super easy to get around and it is convenient. I find that I spend a lot less time traveling in between places, commutes are shorter, and I find that people's radius here are a lot smaller. By that I mean, for example, if I propose like a dinner location with a friend and it's 25 minutes away, they'll be like, oh, okay, like, is this a special occasion? I feel like 15 minutes are people's sweet spot. Anything more than that and people can be like, that's a bit of a trek. There's just a lot less traffic in general, and Perth roads are definitely easier to drive. Coming from me, I'm the worst driver of all time. I find that people here can't merge, but it's okay because I also can't merge. But anyway, pro number three, as I said, there are so many wonderful road trip destinations here in WA. So there are many day trip destinations. So for example, going to the Swan Valley is always really nice. And then there's more of the winery region trips like Margaret River. It's so beautiful, and again, easy to get to if you have a car. Pro number four, I would say that a big change that I noticed coming back here is Perth's food scene is so much better and it continues to grow. And I have a very long list of places that I want to try here in Perth, which I honestly didn't expect, and it's so wonderful to see. And there's definitely diversity of cuisines, which is incredible. Cuisines? I feel like I said that weird. Anyway, we're not going to dwell on it. I will just say, like, a con related to Perth's food scene is that I think the average quality of food in Perth is just lower than bigger cities like Sydney or Melbourne. I find that you're more able to just walk into a random restaurant or a cafe and find good food, good drinks, etc. And it's just less so in Perth. I feel like I have to do more research to find the good food, and good food is definitely out there. I just have to put more effort into finding those locations. Pro number five, this one is going to sound a bit weird, I know, and it's also a little bit personal, but in Perth it feels like everyone kind of knows each other. And I used to hate this growing up because I found it so complicated. Like, you would meet someone and you're like, oh, you're this person's ex, or you're this person's ex-best friend, and everyone had such a complicated, messy, interlinked history. But moving back, I actually enjoy bumping into people, into acquaintances, you know, people that I used to work with, etc. And I feel like it gives me more of a cozy community feel, and it feels more like a familiar city. It's a bit of an odd pro, but it's genuinely how I feel, so I wanted to include it. Pro number six, I would say that Perth's arts and culture scene is way better than it used to be. I feel like there's so much more happening in Perth, like farmers markets, art exhibitions, concerts, you know, sports, games. I don't know sports. You'll still find, you know, musical artists giving Perth. That's just part and parcel of living here, but I would say that it happens less often, and it is really nice to see that there are just a lot more events popping up here. Now, the final pro, I really enjoy the laid-back lifestyle here. I feel like the vibe of Perth is just more peaceful, it's very calm, and I do enjoy having a quieter week and then, you know, going out and about on the weekend. I think especially if you're in a stage of life where you want to feel a little bit more settled down, Perth is a great city to do that. And again, if you are an outdoorsy person who loves to go out and about and you love the summer, seriously, Perth is an incredible place to live. I feel like coming back here as an adult, I feel like I can appreciate a lot more that the city has to offer, even though I do still freak out when friends are like, oh my god, we're gonna come visit, and I'm like, oh shit, where am I gonna take you? Perth, I would say, is a better place to live than visit. Anyway, those were the pros and cons. I really hope you found this helpful. If you have different opinions of Perth, I'm sure you do, please let me know in the comments. I would love to know your experience. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please don't forget to subscribe to support my channel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!